Okay, well, hello everyone. It's wonderful to be able to speak with you again today. Uh, Today my presentation is entitled Start Small, and of course that's day 20 of the Tao of Joy Every Day. And the subtitle I've chosen for this presentation is The Small Stuff. And I'm guessing, many of us have been in this meeting for many years, and I'm guessing most of you probably have an idea just from the title what this is going to be about, because Derek has talked about it often. And that, of course, is the idea of when you're undertaking a large task and it can be somewhat overwhelming, there's a tendency to sort of put it off. And so Derek has shared his insights on a good way to approach that. And of course, the simple explanation for that is to, as the title says, to start small, start with the small stuff. And so that's mainly what this presentation is going to be about. But it is interesting, the reason why I chose the small stuff as the subtitle is because when you think about, well, just about anything in the world, it's all made up of small stuff. Even something as complex as a human being, right? Up here, it's incredibly complex when you think about consciousness or even just biological function, how all the things that happen without us thinking about it, it's all automatic. But all of those things are made up of little small things. We're, of course, made of cells. There's smaller parts within cells. Ultimately, we're made up of atoms. And you can, of course, drill smaller than that even. You can go to subatomic particles and even beyond point particles. I mean, in the current thinking of physics, string theory is kind of figuring out, what are the smallest constituents of matter that can't be sort of pinned down. Things like the string or the idea of brain theory and meaning membranes. All of those things, of course, are small things that everything else is made of. And so everything from big stuff to even stuff we think is little, there's still smaller parts. And it seems almost like you could infinitely break things down into small parts. And I think that's why when you're undertaking a large task that can seem overwhelming, it's helpful to find out how you can break it down, because the big is made up of the small, there generally always is a way to break things down to a smaller and smaller thing, even something very complicated. I mean, ultimately, if you think about it, that's how an algorithm really works, right? If you take a complicated process, if I say to someone, go rebuild that engine, unless you're a mechanic, that doesn't mean anything to you. But if you broke down the steps into an algorithm, anyone could do it, even someone who doesn't know what they're doing, as long as they followed the steps exactly. So that's why breaking things down into small steps is so effective, and why Derek's advice over the years about doing that is such good advice. Okay, so I'm going to start to jump into it here. So I want to start with an excerpt from the Tao Te Ching, chapter 63. Plan difficult tasks through the simplest tasks. Achieve large tasks through the smallest tasks. The difficult tasks of the world must be handled through the simple tasks. The large tasks of the world must be handled through the small tasks. And, for the reason I gave a moment ago, this is just an axiom that just tends to be so true. Because everything is ultimately made up of smaller things, doing this really does sort of get you going. And of course, the difficulty that happens is when we're facing a large or a difficult task, which I've chosen to depict here as a giant ascending staircase. And if you think of yourself at the bottom of a project or the bottom of an undertaking, just looking up at where you have to go or looking at the final point, even if you don't know how you're going to get there, just looking up at that can be overwhelming sometimes. Sometimes, and I think this is ultimately why so many people do tend to procrastinate, to put things off, because we generally tend to avoid what we fear. And so if we don't know, exactly how we're going to do something big right away, the tendency is to avoid it. And that's why people put things off. And that's why we have expressions like the 11th hour and the last minute and so forth, because it is human nature to put off stuff that we find difficult or that we fear, possibly. So the important thing to remember when you find yourself metaphorically at the bottom of a staircase or at the beginning of a large project or maybe even just a goal. It could even be an ongoing goal. Like in a way, for me, Tao cultivation is an ongoing goal. It's not like the transformation process is ever going to end. It's a continuous process. Once you sign up for Taoism, you're signed up to it for life in a way, because it's about constant growth and transformation. And that's one of the things I love about it, and that you're never really finished if you think about it. And even if enlightenment is possible, from what we're told from Buddhist tradition, anyways, is that many times the enlightened being comes back to help others. So and in each lifetime there are things to accomplish and things to do. So in a sense, what signing up for Taoism is signing up for eternity in a way, in my view. And yes, that of course is a matter of faith. But one thing to keep in mind when you find yourself at, like I said, metaphorically at the bottom of a staircase, is to realize that sometimes, if you know what the end is supposed to look like, but you don't know how to get there, the best thing you could do is break it down into the smallest thing you can see to do first. Usually either a small thing or an easy thing or a simple thing. If you can figure out what that thing is and do that, often once you do that, an amazing thing happens. One, you gain confidence in yourself, you gain a sense of accomplishment. And in doing that, it'll spike your energy level quite naturally. It'll spike your energy level. And it'll give you the oomph, so to speak, to keep going. And then, of course, you systematically can continue. You just keep picking the easiest, simplest task before you. And, sometimes it's really hard. Sometimes you come across something you're working towards and you hit a wall, so to speak. And when that happens, the key is to find a way to break it down. And as I said, because everything big is made up of things small, in my experience, there's always a way to break it down. And once you can break it down, then you can do the part that's simple that you can do. And from there, you can build. Oftentimes in undertaking a project too, sometimes you have to take step one before you even know what step two is. I've been involved in projects like that, where we know what the end is supposed to look like. We know where to begin, but I don't know what step two is. But once you're in it and you've done step one leads you to step two. And I found that to be true both professionally and not only professionally, but in my personal goals as well. My goals for, how I want my relationships to be in my personal life with my family and my friends. My goals for how I handle difficult people, whether they're difficult people in my personal life or difficult people in my professional life. Those are all goals too that have steps to mastering. And if you can break it down and realize, what small thing can I work on to make this a little bit better? Because if you keep trying to make things a little better, you'll master those things. You'll make those little things better. And in the end, it's always the sum total of what we do that ends up being the measure for our success in life. And of course, in Taoism, to be successful in life, You want to have a life of peace and balance and energy. And mastering or completing the large tasks through the small tasks is the perfect way to do that, to have that life of balance. It is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you take it one step at a time. And that's ultimately what Derek has been saying for years, because I've been fortunate enough, of course, to have been a part of this meeting for many years and to have listened to Derek and Bill and Ed speak on these topics. And, it always makes perfect sense when they say it. But it often is a challenge to start doing it. It is a challenge, so to speak, to stop procrastinating and get off the couch and actually go do it. The metaphoric couch. There's all kinds of couches in life that we could ease back into patterns that are familiar but aren't necessarily good for us. But when we listen to the teachings and we try with a sincere heart to cultivate, the universe tends to open up for you. It tends to help you. Help comes from the least expected places. And it's a wonderful thing. And so ultimately, when facing a large task, breaking it down into the smaller ones is really key to turning those large and difficult tasks into a much easier path to success. And I know that it's been incredibly helpful to me, like I said, not only professionally, but personally as well, to do that. But of course, the key is you do have to start. And, I understand why we procrastinate. And honestly, by nature, I'm not much of a procrastinator. I tend to be more of a workaholic, frankly. I tend to bend toward that, which also, by the way, is not good. Ultimately, you want to achieve a balance with these things. But we all have our moments of procrastination. Certainly, even though I do tend to be a hard worker and so forth, I often will have a situation where I'll procrastinate. I think we all do it. It's human nature. And a lot of it is, a fear of getting there or fear of doing what needs to be done or not knowing exactly how it's going to be done. It can seem so overwhelming that we tend to try to avoid it. But the key is to jump in and try. And one of the ways to make that jumping in easier is to start with the simplest, easy, and basic things and small things and do those first. Let that build up your energy store, and that'll propel you on to the next steps. And before you know it, that elusive goal ends up to being coming to be. You achieve it because you started with the small. So I'm going to start to sum it up now. So my first point is a skillful way to overcome procrastination is to take stock of all the tasks that need to be completed on any given project, and then choose what will be the smallest, or the easiest, or the simplest task. Once you identify the smallest, or easiest, or simplest task, undertake it, complete it, select the next or simplest tasks, and repeat the process. If the task is not small enough, or easy enough, or simple enough, the challenge will be to break it down further until you see the small or easy or simple step for you to act on. And as I said in the beginning, because everything big is made up of small things, it's always, in my belief, it's always possible to break it down. And that's what we build on. And that's ultimately how we learn to do things too, if you think about it. Accomplishing the small, easy, and simple tasks will allow you to feel and become aware of that positive energy. It will propel you into the next step and ultimately to the completion of your undertaking. Before long, you begin to recognize that what seemed like a gigantic chore that you wanted to delay has transformed into a series of small, easy, and simple tasks that come together to make your great undertaking come to fruition. And of course, by great undertaking, I mean everything. I mean everything we do. The things we do in our career, the things we do with our family, the things we do with our friends, and the relationships we have, and what we do in life. The success of life, one of the key things is to start small and keep on going. Because all are broken up into small things. And by accomplishing those little things, you achieve a lot, seemingly without trying sometimes, although that's not entirely true. Of course, there's always effort involved. But what you'll find is that beginning sometimes is the hardest part. And start beginning. The next steps tend to come naturally. And often it allows you to see what the next steps are. So hopefully this, I know we've probably all heard this idea put forward by Derek many times, but it's such good wisdom. And realistically, it is so easy to do, because the ultimate thing is this is sort of like a tip for how to approach any task. And it's such a good tip that if you apply it to your life, if you take the idea to heart and really put it to work, before long you'll stop procrastinating and you'll start achieving. You'll increase your amount of achievement just by putting this simple plan of accomplishing the large to the small. Just by doing that, you really will start to feel a spike in what you can do. So as always, I would like to end with a book recommendation, The Tao of Joy Every Day, a great book to use daily to help one study and learn the Tao teachings and put them into action. Thank you all so much for allowing me to speak with you today. I hope I said something that was of use, and I hope you all have a wonderful Sunday.
Alex, thank you so much for that thoughtful presentation. And you are absolutely correct. Over the years, I've lost track of the number of times I found that approach, that was advocated by Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching. I found that to be so incredibly helpful. And I also want to emphasize that on one side of it seems like the logical, rational, reasonable thing to do. Start small, baby steps. Don't try to run until you've learned how to walk and stuff like that. It all seems to make a lot of sense. But there's another dimension to it, and that's the emotions and feelings. What I mean specifically is in reference to what you said about feeling energized by the completion of a small task. And, at first blush, you might not expect that completing something small, almost trivial, would bring about some positive energy that you can use. But from experience, what I've found is that not only do you get energy out of a small thing that's accomplished, the reason why you do get that energy is because you know in yourself that if you hadn't done it this way, it would still not be done, and you would feel guilty, you would berate yourself, you would think of yourself as, oh, I am so lazy. Why can't I just stop procrastinating? You would be doing all kinds of negative downward spiral. But now that you have done something, you know that something is better than nothing. And therefore, there's positive energy in that. And the dimension that I want to emphasize is that as you progress along the small steps, you're going to find yourself thinking to yourself, hey, this is actually kind of fun. And that, again, I've lost track of the number of times when I tackled something that I thought was huge, was daunting, was burdensome, was not going to be something that I would enjoy. But when I break it down to tiny little tasks and I progress along the way, I find myself saying, gee, I'm actually having fun. How did that happen? Well, when I'm getting to that point of feeling fun, then I know that the rest of the project is not going to be as big a challenge as I thought it was going to be initially. So I would like to urge everyone to listen to what Alex is saying today. It really works.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to what you said because it's so spot on. But as spoken by that other great Tao master, Mary Poppins, in every chore that must be done, there's an element of fun. Find the fun and snap, the job's a game. And that's basically Taoism 101 there, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That is so true. So, ask yourself this question. How would you like to have fun in absolutely everything you do in life? And people will say, well, that's not possible. Come on. And I'm here to tell you, indeed, it is possible. You just got to open your eyes and look for that. You will find it.